I am not reviewing X-Sonic. I understand he is probably the most anticipated mod for SRB2 since Inazuma and Aether released at the start of the year, but despite having spent somewhere around 10 hours trying to get to grips with his moveset, testing him out on a dozen different custom levels, collecting every Chaos Emerald and Dark Chaos Emerald, watching plenty of speedruns to pick up tricks and tips, and even going so far to change my controls to accommodate for him, I still dislike him. Hell, I like him less now after doing all of that than I did when first picking him up. He's a fantastic character, don't get me wrong, but he's also part of a character archetype I really don't have the time for. Incredibly quick and primed for absolutely ridiculous speedrun paths, but has a skill floor higher than most characters' skill ceilings. In the nicest possible way, I have better things to do than sit there getting no enjoyment or satisfaction for hours smashing my head into a wall trying to learn how to optimize a character, because making use of their moveset requires more time and effort than mastering 95% of others on the market. But I do realise it'd be stupid for me to ignore the character completely. It was so popular that he crashed the SRB2 message boards for God's sake, so even if I can't do even a slightly objective review of him, I'll need to find some way else I can put him in a title and thumbnail. But then how do I go around doing this? How do I make good use of X-Sonic in a format outside of a review that is vaguely entertaining and offers some more unique insight? A playthrough is pointless, you can download the character for yourself, and if you're watching this video then you probably have enough experience with SRB2 that I can't even drop any fun new information for you. At the same time, I'm not good enough to bring out some sort of speedrun or even give advanced tips and tricks to save seconds off your times. Wait 1 second. For a while now I've wanted to make a video chronicling my attempts at learning to speedrun SRB2. I just haven't got around to it. But X-Sonic is pretty much explicitly designed to be used for speedruns. It's pretty much all he can do. His moveset is basically reliant on you being able to do that to make use of it beyond your standard jumps and occasional zip dashes. So, what if I was to use X-Sonic to learn how to speedrun some of the most popular speedrunning maps across SRB2? You know the kind I'm talking about, the Black Hole 1s, the runs, the island crosses of the world. Maybe if I do this, then I can actually get around to getting better at SRB2. And then one day I might even be able to review X-Sonic without it basically just being one massive cope about my skill issues. So that's what I did. I began practicing playing X-Sonic on these stages, devoting 1 day of practice to each stage and attempting to get as good of a time as possible. In that day, I'd practice, record, script and edit the relevant sections of the video, split into 2 parts, purely for the sake of keeping up a decent cadence of releases. In this video, I'll be covering Black Core, Run and Island Cross, the 3 maps I didn't need to download for this video, which meant the poll I sent out to get recommendations for the other 3 maps had time to get some results. But let's get going. Black Core Act 1 is sort of the pinnacle of SRB2 speedrunning. Out of all of the vanilla levels, with the possible exception of Green Flower Mountain Act 1, it is the shortest and most linear you can get, and combined with the simple fact that it has a time limit in the form of an opponent you need to beat, from the get-go you need to beat it quickly. It's no wonder then you see so many speedrun channels doing runs on this stage. It's pretty much the perfect track, a circuit where the lack of alternate routes makes it the in-the-moment reflexes to save off milliseconds more important than plotting your path. It's also handy for X-Sonic, because it's pretty much just a series of straight lines you can zip dash along. If we take a look at the map of a level, we can see that the intended path is to dash forward, bear right into a loop around an energy wall, zigzag past these spikes, bear right again to once again make a U-turn into a left turn into a spring. That spring then bounces you over onto a higher path, before dropping back down to dodge various lasers to reach the most hazardous segment. This lava room you need to do some platforming of middling difficulty over. From there, a series of straight lines and right angle turns leads to the goalpost. With X-Sonic, we can adjust this path slightly. Straight away, we can attempt to thread the needle here with a zip dash jump to climb up this wall, cutting out the first loop. Then we could get some speed sneakers here using another wall run, although I think the length of an animation would make the route slower overall. From there, we can cut out most of this U-turn using another zip dash jump, before using another to jump straight across this gap. Zip dash through these spikes and lasers will cut out some time. Something about the zip dash seems to stop them hitting you particularly often. Before we use the rings we've collected thus far to attempt to ring burst straight to the exit of the lava room, before zip dash to speed us through the corridors to the end. Prior to recording my attempts, I was able to achieve a 1:32:9:14 taking the intended path without using any of Xonic's abilities, and after a lot of trial and error, a 00:52:28 materialized when taking a form of my modified path, taking full advantage of Xonic's abilities. With that in mind, I'm aiming to try and rate a flat 45 seconds to count as a speedrun. Some changes needed to be made then. Firstly, I needed to turn off Xonic's voice lines. You can only hear so many
Thanks a lot, Wall!
before going completely mad, and I was reaching my breaking point. Then I needed to figure out my weaknesses and the areas of improvement on the route. The most immediate skills I needed to better were my accuracy and my reflex speed. I noticed that my zip dashes, which are absolutely key for an Xonic speedrun, were not particularly straight. I was often overdoing the turning motion at 90-degree corners, which was causing me to bounce off walls and lose time. That was also linked to my reflexes. If I could better time zip dash releases, I could be faster for longer and be a bit more lenient with my aim around corners. The areas I was slowing down around the track were also fairly obvious. Threading the needle at the start is tricky, as I often ended up bouncing off of the first platform or running up the pillar I need to slip around, but there were also problems elsewhere. It's rare to have enough rings at the lava room to be able to ring burst to the end, and I was finding myself catching these lasers when zip dash jumping across this gap. My path needed to be modified. For the sake of consistency, I decided on keeping to the safer zip dash jump path at the start, by jumping onto this platform and hitting the wall from there. It reduces the likelihood of me hitting the pillar, and the extra height guaranteed I'd have the momentum to scale the full wall consistently. By aiming the zip dash correctly here, I could avoid having to zigzag around this bluff to maintain one longer zip dash, then use that speed to scale this wall faster. Aiming slightly more to the left here is fine to avoid these lasers, as the platform you're aiming towards is wide enough to reach regardless as long as you can get a good enough zip dash jump. Ring bursting is nice if available, but if you don't have the rings, it's better to jump into the lava and wall run up the wall while invincible. You have to be quick, but that's why this is a speedrun. Good zip dash lines are key for this final section, passing as quickly as possible. Then you just need to hit these red springs for maximum speed on the final stretch. Using snap dives to speed up descents was the final cherry on top, and putting it all together meant my times began to drop. First a 00:52:57, then a big drop to a 00:46:257 again, then just barely scraping the target with a 00:45:342. And finally, after about 25 minutes of attempts, a time of 00:43:145. It's far from optimal, but for a newbie speedrunner playing a character he's not very good at, that seems like a fine time for me. Here's the run. I was initially planning on following Black Core up with Run. You know, do the map from the OG So Sestancia before going on to So Sestancia 2, but I got too annoyed with it, and decided on doing Island Cross first instead. The structure of the level just required a precision I didn't yet have, whereas the larger, more open-ended Island Cross could allow me to be a little looser. It's probably the most open-ended level I'm attempting in today's video, even though it is still absolutely linear and you're still not really needing to plot a route. There's a bit more room in which to do things like zip-dash jumps or really long ring bursts. It took me a while to figure out a general route with which to take using X-Sonic's abilities, but in the end I managed a time of about 1:25 something something something. Look, it took me ages to reach that point as I was fiddling around with sensitivity and control schemes and this and that, so I wasn't keeping exact check. Luckily, unlike with Black Core, I have an actual X-Sonic speedrun from Dipper Deliver to produce a time for me to aspire to, a time of 0050971. Let's split the difference and say I need to reach a time of 1 minute flat. To that end, I enhanced my run with a few little optimizations to save off the seconds. Using a zip dash jump to avoid this boat at the start, 1:06:62. Sticking to the left in this tunnel to avoid the bombs from this badnik, 1:03:40. Using a ring burst to skip most of this platforming, 1:01:88. You don't want to skip all of it though, you need about 35 to 40 rings to ring burst over this section, and while you can get that from rings lying throughout the stage, you want to ensure you have the necessary number by popping these monitors. You want to avoid the water slides, as X-Sonic doesn't play nice with water. That got me down to a 1:1:42. You don't need to worry about any scripted sections affecting your run, as you're just so fast that you can pass them before they affect the level, but you might still want to follow their paths to gather rings. Put it all together, and after about 55 minutes, I hit my target, 00:59:60. Once again, here's the run. Run is a difficult stage. It is effectively a series of straight lines and hard corners, very linear, which is probably why it has always been a popular speedrunning map. But it isn't quite as simple as that, because those straight lines are filled with various things that require good reflexes and reaction speed to avoid. At standard SRB2 speeds, it's more than manageable. In fact, it's a really easy stage. At X-Sonic speeds, it's hellish. I either make a conscious choice to slow down for large chunks of the level, or power through and hope for the best. That'd be a more attractive proposition if Run was simply a fast-paced level with a lot of incoming obstacles you need to react to quickly. But it's not. At all times, the level is constantly being sprayed with a barrage of bullets from Eggman Zealots, and if you stop at any point, they will hit you. Again, not so bad when playing as a vanilla character, because you just don't stop. As X-Sonic though, That's not as much of a choice, because messing up a zip dash will cause you to bounce off a wall and get hit, skidding to adjust direction can cause you to get hit, spin kicking objects can cause you to get hit. With everything put together, Run asks a lot of you to be able to speedrun it as an exceptionally fast character like X-Sonic. There are other things too, but if I started complaining about every inconvenient detail, I'd be here for hours. It took me a long time to post any time as X-Sonic to base a speedrun off of, as I just could not get to the end, but in the end, I managed a time of 1:58.142. That was a very, very bad run, but by this point the deadline for me needing to release a video was creeping up. So I just set myself an hour timer and looked to see what time I could get by the end of that. 1:52.114, 1:37.828, 1:30.571. The times began to drop. 1:23.771, 1:23.714, 1:20.771. These were all within the first 15 minutes of attempts. Clearly the time I set was, indeed, truly abysmal, and seeing as I kept finding ways to cut potentially entire seconds out of my runs, I was confident that I could get my time down significantly past this point as well. 1:18.28. And that was the last time I set in the hour. After the 15-minute mark, I just couldn't get a decent full run together, as every time I had a good opening I'd have problems at the end, or I'd struggle at the start and pull down a fantastic last leg. Or hell, I'd have a blazing fast run only for something stupid to happen and kill me. I once sped through the city segment only to fall in this little lake at the side of the final hill and lose all of my time advantage getting back out. As it turns out, all of those little weird glitches that happen in Run that I mentioned in my review of Sosin Starter become much more important when trying to do a speedrun on it, and I found new weird stuff too. The truly abysmal auto run that's applied to you at the 2/3 mark makes the final section a case of hoping and praying for the best, and all of those visual glitches where half of the level objects are invisible doesn't help with planning either. Why can I vote over these blocking crowds in my best runs, only for it to never work again? Why is it a 50-50 thing whether or not I'll get thrown back when I hit these bandits when zip dashing? Half the time I plow through them, and the other half of the time I get launched into orbit. Spin kicks are barely functional in most of this level, because you will rarely aim at what you want or just do an unaimed version, because there are perpetually dozens of invisible bullets flying your way. It was a nightmare. All my strategies to save time would randomly choose upon booting up the level whether or not they would work that run, and I'll just have to take my time at 1:18.28. It's still 40 seconds faster than my original run. It's not great, but here it is.
Not getting away! Lock the attack! Inside the building! Crash them! Follow them! Turn them into a cut bomb! Without
I'm going to be gone for a while after releasing this video, so don't expect part 2 of this for a while. There's been glimmers of enjoyment in this speedrunning process so far, but my main thought is currently just, I wish I was doing this with any character other than X-Sonic. For now, I need time to recuperate before taking on the next 3 levels, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.